Marcus Johnson was born in the small town of Riverdale, where opportunities were few and dreams often remained just that, dreams. His mother, Sophia, worked long hours at the local hospital as a nurse, returning home tired, but never too exhausted to ask about her son's stay. Their small apartment wasn't much, but it was filled with love and the growing collection of ribbons and certificates that covered one wall. At just 6 years old, Marcus showed unusual speed and coordination. His elementary school teacher, Mrs. Harper, noticed how he always finished first during recess races, leaving other children far behind. "That boy runs like his feet barely touch the ground," she told Sophia during a parent-teacher meeting. With Mrs. Harper's encouragement, Sophia signed Marcus up for the community youth track program. The fees stretched their tight budget, but Sophia picked up extra weekend shifts to make it work. "Some kids are born with gifts," the program coach told her after watching Marcus run for the first time. "Your son has something special." By age 10, Marcus was winning regional competitions. He wasn't just fast, he had perfect form, a natural rhythm that more experienced runners worked years to develop. Other parents began to notice. Some cheered his success, but others whispered when they thought no one could hear. "Must be in his genes," they would say, their tones making clear this wasn't meant as a compliment. Middle school brought new challenges. Marcus was growing taller, his lanky frame sometimes working against him as he adjusted to his changing body. Some days were frustrating as he struggled to maintain his earlier times. "Growth is not linear," his coach explained. "Your body is rebuilding itself. Patience." The Johnson apartment began to fill with more impressive trophies. Local newspapers started mentioning Marcus in their sports sections. A reporter from the Riverdale Gazette wrote a feature about him when he broke the district record for the 200-meter dash at 13 years old. The article included a photo of Marcus grinning widely, his mother standing proudly beside him. High school freshman year changed everything. The coach at Eastside High, Coach Wilson, saw Marcus run once and immediately put him on the varsity team, an honor rarely given to freshmen. Under Wilson's guidance, Marcus learned proper training techniques, nutrition, and race strategy. His times improved dramatically. "You need to think about college scholarships," Coach Wilson told Sophia and Marcus during a meeting. With his talent, the right university program could be his ticket to something bigger. The idea of college had seemed distant before, a luxury the Johnsons couldn't afford. Now it became a real possibility. By his sophomore year, Marcus was breaking school records set by seniors. He was focused, disciplined, and hungry to improve. Every morning, he woke at 5:30 a.m. to run before school. Every afternoon, he stayed late for team practice. On weekends, he studied race videos and tracked his nutrition in a notebook Sophia had bought him. Life wasn't all training, though. Marcus maintained solid grades, knowing that academics were just as important as athletics for college opportunities. He had a small group of close friends who understood his dedication and never pressured him when he missed parties for competitions. The walls of their apartment could barely hold all his achievements now. Sophia had to buy a special shelf just for his growing collection of medals. Local businesses began to sponsor his competition fees, and a running shoe company provided free equipment. As his sophomore year ended, Marcus ranked third in the state for his age group. College scouts were starting to take notice, sending letters expressing interest. The future looked bright, until the Johnsons had to move across town, changing Marcus's school district and putting him under the guidance of a new coach who would change the course of his life, though not in the way anyone expected. The Westfield High School track was freshly resurfaced, its bright red surface gleaming in the afternoon sun. Marcus stood at the edge, his worn running shoes in sharp contrast to the pristine facility. This school had everything Eastside didn't: electronic timing systems, a state-of-the-art weight room, and Coach Richards, known throughout the state for sending athletes to Division I colleges. "You must be Johnson," Coach Richards said without looking up from his clipboard when Marcus arrived for his first practice. Unlike Coach Wilson's warm welcome at Eastside, Richards barely acknowledged him. "Your times from Eastside are decent. We'll see if they hold up here." Marcus nodded, eager to prove himself. The team was already warming up. 20 boys in matching practice uniforms. Marcus joined them in his Eastside shorts and a plain t-shirt, feeling immediately out of place. "New guy thinks he's going to walk onto the best team in the district," Marcus overheard one runner whisper to another. "Coach won't make it easy." During that first practice, Richards had the team run time trials. Marcus finished the 400-meter dash 3 seconds faster than anyone else. Instead of praise, Richards frowned at his stopwatch. "Your form needs work," he told Marcus in front of everyone. "And you started before my whistle." "No, coach, Marcus began. "Don't talk back," Richards cut him off. "That's strike one." In the weeks that followed, a pattern emerged. When team assignments were posted for the first meet, Marcus was listed as an alternate despite having the fastest times. When he asked why, Richards claimed his practice performance wasn't consistent enough. During one practice, Marcus broke the school record for the 200-meter dash. 2 seniors witnessed it, their mouths hanging open in shock. "Did you see that?" one whispered to the other. Coach Richards had been looking down at his phone. "See what?" he asked. "Marcus just ran a 21.4, the senior said. "That's faster than Thompson's record from last year." Richards glanced at Marcus, then at his stopwatch. 22.1, he announced loudly. "Good, but not record-breaking. Let's move on." Marcus knew what he'd run. The seniors knew it too. That night, he called Coach Wilson from Eastside. "Something's not right," Marcus explained. "It's like he doesn't want me to succeed." "Some coaches play favorites," Wilson said carefully. "But this sounds different." The regional qualifiers were approaching. Despite consistently outperforming his teammates in practice, Marcus remained an alternate. His mother scheduled a meeting with Richards. "My son has the fastest times on your team," Sophia said, sitting straight-backed in Richards' office. "Why isn't he competing?" "Ms. Johnson, track isn't just about raw speed," Richards replied smoothly. "Marcus lacks discipline. His technique is sloppy. College scouts look for polish, not just talent." After Sophia left, Marcus confronted Richards in the empty locker room. "Just tell me what I need to fix," he pleaded. "I'll work harder than anyone." Richards' face hardened. "Look, Johnson, I've been coaching champions for 20 years. Some athletes have the mental toughness for this level, some don't." He paused, looking Marcus directly in the eyes. "Your kind tends to rely on natural ability rather than putting in the hard work. That doesn't fly in my program." "My kind?" Marcus asked, his stomach dropping. Richards didn't answer, just walked away. The next day, Marcus overheard Richards talking to his assistant coach. The Johnson kid's mother came in complaining. "These parents think their kids deserve special treatment just because they can run fast. They don't understand what it takes to build a championship program." "But his times are incredible," the assistant said. "Times aren't everything," Richards replied. "Trust me, he doesn't have what it takes. They'll crack under pressure like they always do." When the final roster for regionals was posted, Marcus' name wasn't on it. 3 white athletes with slower times would represent Westfield instead. As Marcus stared at the list, a senior named Tom approached him. "This happens every year," Tom whispered. "Remember Lewis from last year? Richardson did the same thing to him." "Was he black too?" Marcus asked quietly. Tom just nodded and walked away. That night, Marcus lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. For the first time since he started running, he questioned whether it was worth continuing. The small bedroom that had once been filled with dreams now felt like a prison to Marcus. Trophies that once proudly displayed his achievements now seemed to mock him. 3 weeks had passed since Coach Richards had left him off the regional roster, and Marcus hadn't returned to practice since. "You're going to be late for school," Sophia called from the kitchen, her voice tinged with worry. She had watched her once confident son transform into a shadow of himself. His grades were slipping. His usual morning runs had stopped. Even his appetite had diminished. "I don't feel well," Marcus mumbled, pulling the covers over his head. It was the 3rd time that week he tried to skip school. Sophia sat on the edge of his bed. "This isn't you, Marcus. You've never given up on anything before." "What's the point?" he replied, his voice muffled by the blanket. "I could be the fastest runner in the world, and Coach Richards still wouldn't put me on the team." "Then maybe it's time to consider other options," Sophia said gently. "But staying in bed isn't one of them." At school, Marcus moved through the hallways like a ghost. Fellow students who once greeted him with high fives now whispered as he passed. In class, he stared blankly at the board, unable to focus on anything except the burning question: was he not good enough, Or was something else at play? His English teacher, Ms. Rodriguez, kept him after class when he failed to turn in an assignment. "This isn't like you, Marcus. What's going on?" The simple kindness in her voice broke something in him. Before he could stop himself, a whole story came pouring out: the rejection, the unfairness, the comments about his kind. Ms. Rodriguez listened quietly, her expression growing more concerned. "Have you told anyone else about this? The principal? The athletic director?" Marcus shook his head. "It would be my word against his. And he's Coach Richards. He sent more athletes to college than anyone in the district." "That doesn't give him the right to discriminate," Ms. Rodriguez said firmly. That afternoon, Marcus received an unexpected call from Coach Wilson at Eastside High. "Your mother told me what happened," Wilson said. "I've known Richards for years. There have been rumors, but no one's ever spoken up." "What can I do?" Marcus asked, sitting on the front steps of his apartment building. "No one will believe me." "Maybe not one person alone," Wilson replied thoughtfully. "But you might not be alone in this." At Wilson's suggestion, Marcus reached out to Thomas Lewis, the runner who had graduated the previous year after similar treatment from Richards. Thomas agreed to meet at a local diner. "I thought I wasn't good enough," Thomas admitted, stirring his coffee nervously. "I blamed myself for months. Then I saw it happen to another kid the year before me. The pattern was clear." "Did you ever say anything?" Marcus asked. Thomas shook his head. "I was scared it would hurt my chances at college recruitment. I got a small scholarship to state, but I often wonder what could have happened if I'd had a fair shot my senior year." More conversations followed. Marcus spoke with 3 other former Westfield runners, all black, all with similar stories. Each conversation lifted a small piece of the weight from his shoulders. The problem wasn't him. His mother noticed the change. "You seem different today," she said one evening. "I am," Marcus replied, picking at his dinner. "But I don't know what to do with this anger. Sometimes I just want to quit." "That's exactly what men like Richards want," Sophia said firmly. "Your talent is a gift. Don't let anyone take it from you." That night, Marcus pulled out his running shoes from the back of his closet. They were dusty from weeks of neglect. He ran his fingers over them, remembering the feeling of flying down a track, the wind in his face, the pure joy of speed. Before dawn the next morning, for the first time in weeks, Marcus laced up his shoes. The cool morning air filled his lungs as he started jogging. His muscles protested at first, but soon remembered their purpose. With each stride, a small piece of himself returned. He wasn't ready to face Richards yet. He wasn't sure what justice would look like. But he knew one thing with absolute certainty: he wasn't finished running. Not by a long shot. The Bayside Invitational was the largest track meet in the state. Athletes from 30 high schools gathered at the massive stadium, their colorful uniforms creating a rainbow effect in the stands. Marcus stood at the edge of the parking lot, watching coaches and runners stream through the gates. "Are you sure about this?" Sophia asked, standing beside her son. "You haven't competed in months." Marcus nodded, clutching his registration form. "I need to know if I still can." Since Richards had rejected him, Marcus had been training alone. Every morning before school, every evening until dark. Without a coach or teammates, he pushed himself using only stopwatches and determination. Today, he would compete as an unaffiliated athlete, allowed under state rules, though uncommon. "Your old East Side uniform still fits," Sophia said, straightening his collar. Coach Wilson would be proud. The registration table was crowded with teams checking in. When Marcus presented his individual form, the volunteer looked surprised. "No school affiliation?" she asked. "No," Marcus replied simply. "Lane 8, Heat 3 for the 400 meters," she said, handing him a number to pin to his shirt. Walking alone among team clusters felt strange. Marcus spotted the Westfield team across the field. Coach Richards was giving a pep talk, surrounded by his runners. For a moment, their eyes met. Richards frowned and turned away. As Marcus warmed up, a tall woman in a USA track and field jacket watched him from the sidelines. Her close-cropped silver hair and perfect posture made her stand out among the high school coaches. When Marcus completed his stretches, she approached. "Your form is excellent," she said, extending her hand. "Sandra Williams." Marcus recognized the name immediately. Sandra Williams had coached Olympic medalists. Her training center in the neighboring district was legendary. Marcus Johnson, he replied, shaking her hand nervously. Thank you, ma'am. Which school are you with? She asked, looking for a team logo on his uniform. None right now. I'm competing independently. Something flickered in her eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. That's unusual. Mind if I ask why? Before Marcus could answer, the announcer called for the 400-meter runners to report to the starting area. Good luck, Williams said. I'll be watching. The starting blocks felt foreign after months away from competition. Marcus settled into position, trying to calm his racing heart. The stadium fell quiet. The starter gun fired. Marcus exploded forward, muscle memory taking over. The first curve came quickly, and he found himself in fourth position. The second straightaway appeared, and he pushed harder, passing 2 runners. At the final turn, only 1 runner remained ahead. The Westfield team captain wearing Richards' colors. With 50 meters left, Marcus heard his mother's voice above the crowd. Something inside him shifted. Every early morning, every lonely practice, every doubt and fear converted into pure energy. He surged forward, pulling even with the Westfield runner. 10 meters from the finish, Marcus pulled ahead. He crossed the line first, gasping for air as the crowd roared. The electronic board flashed his time, 47.2 seconds, a meet record. As Marcus caught his breath, he felt a tap on his shoulder. Sandra Williams stood there, looking impressed. That was remarkable, she said, especially for someone training without a team. Thank you, Marcus managed between breaths. I'm curious about your situation, she continued. Would you have time to talk after the meet? Across the track, Coach Richards was staring, his face unreadable. Later, at a quiet corner table in the stadium cafe, Marcus told Williams everything, the discrimination, the rejection, the months of solo training. Unfortunately, I've seen this before, Williams said when he finished. Richards has a reputation among coaches, though no one has managed to prove anything. She studied Marcus thoughtfully. I rarely recruit high school juniors for my program, but I'm willing to make an exception. She slid a business card across the table. We have a satellite training center near Westridge High. If you could transfer there for your senior year, you could join my program. Marcus stared at the card, stunned. Why would you do this for me? Because talent deserves opportunity, Williams replied simply. And because I recognize something in you beyond speed. You have heart. That's rarer than fast times. As Marcus and his mother drove home, the business card felt heavy in his pocket. A new school, a new coach, a new chance. For the first time in months, the future held more than just anger and doubt. It held possibility. What are you thinking? Sophia asked, glancing at her unusually quiet son. Marcus looked out the window at the passing landscape. I'm thinking it's time for a fresh start. The first day at Coach Williams' training facility felt like stepping into another world. Unlike Westfield's aging equipment, every machine here gleamed under bright lights. Professional athletes trained alongside college stars, their movements precise and powerful. Marcus stood in the doorway, suddenly aware of his worn shoes and faded shorts. You must be Johnson, a tall assistant coach said, extending his hand. Coach Williams is expecting you. Follow me. Marcus was led through the main gym to a smaller room filled with screens and analytical equipment. Sandra Williams stood in the center, reviewing footage of a runner in slow motion. Marcus, she smiled, turning to greet him. Right on time. Good. Punctuality matters here. Yes, ma'am, he nodded, trying to hide his nervousness. First things first, she said, gesturing to a treadmill connected to multiple sensors. I need to see exactly what I'm working with. Over the next 2 hours, Marcus ran while cameras captured his movement from every angle. Sensors measured his oxygen intake, muscle engagement, and foot pressure. Each step was analyzed, broken down into data points that flashed across Williams' tablet. When he finally stopped, dripping with sweat, Williams showed him the results. Your natural ability is remarkable, she said, pointing to various graphs. But there are inefficiencies we need to address. Your arm motion wastes energy, your stride length shortens when you fatigue, and your breathing pattern is irregular under pressure. Marcus felt a wave of disappointment. I thought I was better than that. Williams looked at him sharply. Better? You just recorded times that would qualify for national competitions without proper training. Imagine what you'll achieve once we correct these issues. For the first time, Marcus understood the difference between natural talent and professional development. Williams wasn't just praising his abilities, she was showing him a path to something greater. The training regimen was unlike anything he had experienced. Each morning began at 5:30 a.m. with flexibility work, followed by technique drills, strength training, and finally speed work. Afternoons included nutrition counseling, video analysis, and mental preparation. Your body is a precision instrument, Williams explained during their third session. Richards treated you like a natural resource to be exploited. I'm treating you like an athlete to be developed. The contrast was striking. Where Richards had dismissed Marcus' questions, Williams encouraged them. Where Richards had played favorites, Williams gave personalized attention to everyone. Most importantly, where Richards had seen Marcus' race as a limitation, Williams saw only potential. I can't. Marcus started. Yes, you can, she interrupted. Physical limits are real, but they're not where most people think they are. The mind gives up long before the body does. She helped him to his feet. One more interval. Just one. Prove to yourself what's possible. Somehow, Marcus completed it, slower than before, but finished nonetheless. That night, soaking his aching legs in an ice bath, he realized something important. Williams wasn't just rebuilding his athletic ability. She was rebuilding his belief in himself. The transfer to Westridge High School came with its own challenges. As the new kid in his senior year, Marcus had to navigate unfamiliar hallways and make new friends. Some students resented his special training arrangement. Others were simply curious about the quiet runner who disappeared every afternoon to train with Olympic coaches. His English teacher, Mr. Pavel, became an unexpected ally. After class one day, he showed Marcus an article about Williams Training Center. She doesn't take just anyone, Mr. Patel said. Whatever brought you here, it's a remarkable opportunity. Marcus nodded. I'm trying not to waste it. Are you? Mr. Patel asked. Because I noticed you're not participating much in class. Excellence isn't compartmentalized, Marcus. It's a habit. The words stayed with Marcus that evening. During video analysis, Williams pointed out a similar pattern in his running. You hold back at the beginning, she observed, freezing the footage. Conserving energy is smart, but there's a difference between tactical patience and fear of fully committing. Marcus stared at his image on the screen. How do you fix that? Williams turned off the monitor. By understanding what's causing it, what are you afraid of, Marcus? The question hung in the air between them. Finally, Marcus found the words. Disappointment, he admitted. Putting everything I have into something and still not being good enough. Williams nodded slowly. A reasonable fear after what happened with Richards. But ask yourself this, is it better to give everything and fall short, or hold back and never know what you might have achieved? The National Junior Championships drew crowds that filled every seat in the massive stadium. Cameras from major sports networks lined the track, their lenses focused on young athletes who might become tomorrow's stars. In the warm-up area, Marcus stretched quietly, trying to ignore the butterflies in his stomach. Nervous? Coach Williams asked, kneeling beside him. A little, Marcus admitted. There are scouts from everywhere. Williams nodded toward the stands. See the man in the blue jacket? Olympic Committee. The woman next to him? Head coach at Stanford. They've been watching your qualifying times. 6 months of training with Williams had transformed Marcus. His body was leaner, stronger. His technique was precise where it had once been raw. Most importantly, the doubt that had clouded his mind after Richards' rejection had cleared, replaced by quiet confidence. The announcement came over the loudspeaker. Athletes for the men's 400-meter final, please report to the staging area. As Marcus walked toward the starting blocks, a reporter stepped into his path. Marcus Johnson, Lisa Chen from Track Nation, you came out of nowhere this season. What's your story? Before Marcus could answer, Williams stepped between them. He'll have plenty of time for interviews after the race. The starting blocks felt like home now. Marcus settled into position, visualizing the race as Williams had taught him. 400 meters. 1 lap. 45 seconds of perfect focus. The starter raised his pistol. The crowd fell silent. Bang. Marcus exploded from the blocks, finding his rhythm immediately. The first curve came and went. Down the back stretch, he was neck and neck with the favorite from California. The second curve approached. Marcus remembered Williams' words. That's where champions are made. He pushed harder, pulling slightly ahead. Entering the final straightaway, his legs burned, lungs screamed for oxygen. The California runner was half a step behind, then trying to pass. 20 meters from the finish, Marcus found one last reservoir of strength. He leaned forward at the line, unsure who had won until he saw the scoreboard. Lane 4, Johnson, 44.86, new national junior record. The stadium erupted. Williams embraced him as he gasped for air, whispering, "You did it." Within minutes, reporters surrounded them. Cameras flashed as Marcus, still breathing heavily, answered questions. "How does it feel to break the record?" "Amazing," Marcus managed between breaths. "Coach Williams believed in me when others didn't." "You weren't on the national radar last year," another reporter noted. "What changed?" Marcus hesitated, looking at Williams. She nodded slightly. "I transferred schools after facing discrimination from my previous coach," Marcus said simply. The statement sent ripples through the press area. More questions followed, each digging deeper into his story. That evening, in their hotel room, Marcus watched as his brief comment exploded across sports media. One reporter had connected the dots, uncovering similar stories from other black athletes who had trained under Richards. "Are you okay with this attention?" Sophia asked, watching her son stare at the television. "I think so," Marcus replied. "It's not just about me anymore." The next morning, the story had grown. Sports websites featured headlines like "Rising Star Overcomes Discrimination" and "Keoach Richards' History of Bias Questioned." Several of Richards' former athletes had come forward with their own experiences. Williams arrived at breakfast with a stack of business cards. "College recruiters," she explained. "They all want to meet you." As Marcus thumbed through them, Stanford, Oregon, Texas, Florida, his phone rang. It was Thomas Lewis, the runner who had shared his own experience with Richards. "You did it, man," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "You spoke up. The athletic director at Westfield just announced they're investigating Richards. It's all because of you?" Marcus looked at his mother, then at Williams. "Not just me," he said. "Everyone who shared their story. Everyone who believed in me when I couldn't believe in myself." Later that day, as Marcus stood on the podium receiving his gold medal, he spotted a familiar face in the crowd, Coach Wilson from Eastside, beaming with pride. The journey wasn't over, but in that moment, surrounded by cheers, Marcus understood that sometimes victory means more than just crossing a finish line first. The Olympic Village buzzed with energy as athletes from around the world settled into their temporary homes. Flags from every competing nation hung from balconies, a colorful reminder of the global stage Marcus now stood upon. At 22, he was one of the youngest members of the U.S. track team, yet the red, white, and blue uniform fit him perfectly. "Still can't believe I'm here," Marcus said, gazing out the window at the Olympic Stadium in the distance. His roommate, Deandra Williams, a veteran sprinter competing in his second Olympics, smiled knowingly. "Trust me, it hits you when they play the national anthem during opening ceremonies. That's when you really feel it." 4 years had passed since Marcus's breakthrough at nationals. 4 years of intense training, college competitions, and gradually climbing the ranks of elite athletes. The investigation into Coach Richards had resulted in his suspension and eventually his resignation. More importantly, it had sparked conversations about racial bias in high school sports programs nationwide. Coach Sandra Williams remained by Marcus's side through it all, guiding him through his college career at Stanford and now onto the Olympic team. She had become more than a coach, a mentor who understood both the physical and mental aspects of championship athletics. "Get some rest," she advised during their final practice before preliminary heats. "Your body is ready. Your times are consistent. Now it's about managing the pressure." The pressure was unlike anything Marcus had experienced before. Cameras followed the athletes everywhere. Reporters asked endless questions about his journey, his chances, his feelings about representing his country. Social media exploded with predictions and commentary about every competitor. "How you handle it?" Marcus asked Jason Reeves, the defending Olympic champion and current world record holder in the 400 meters. Reeves, whom Marcus had idolized for years, considered the question carefully. I pretend it's just another race. Same distance, same rules. The crowd's bigger and the stakes are higher, but when that gun goes off, it's just you and the track. The preliminary heat arrived quickly. Marcus stood at the starting line, consciously controlling his breathing as Coach Williams had taught him. The stadium held 80,000 spectators, yet in that moment he heard only the starter's voice. He qualified easily, finishing second in his heat without pushing to his limit. The semifinal proved more challenging, with Marcus needing a personal best time to advance to the final. As he crossed the finish line, the scoreboard confirmed his place. He would compete for an Olympic medal. That night, he couldn't sleep. Each time he closed his eyes, he visualized the race, imagining different scenarios, different outcomes. His phone buzzed with a text message at 2 a.m. "I believe in you, no matter what happens tomorrow. Mom." Simple words that somehow calmed his racing mind. The morning of the final, Marcus followed his routine precisely. Same breakfast, same warm-up exercises, same visualization techniques. In the call room, where athletes waited before being led to the track, the tension was palpable. 8 men, each carrying the hopes of their nation, each knowing that 4 years of work would be decided in less than 45 seconds. Coach Williams made one final check of his starting blocks. "Remember what we've worked on. First curve, establish position. Backstretch, find your rhythm. Second curve, make your move. Home stretch, leave everything on the track." "What if it's not enough?" Marcus whispered, a rare moment of doubt breaking through. Williams looked him directly in the eyes. "It will be. Not because you're faster, but because you've overcome more to get here. That strength doesn't come from muscles. It comes from here." She touched his chest where his heart beat steadily beneath the USA uniform. As the athletes were introduced, the crowd roared for each name. When Marcus Johnson, United States of America, echoed through the stadium, Marcus raised his hand in acknowledgement, feeling the weight of his journey in that simple gesture. 8 lanes, 8 athletes, 1 gold medal. The starter called them to their blocks. Marcus took his position, cleared his mind, and focused on the track ahead. "On your marks. Set." The crack of the starter's pistol shattered the silence. 8 elite athletes exploded from their blocks in perfect synchronization, a blur of colorful uniforms against the red track. Marcus found his rhythm immediately, settling into 4th position as they rounded the first curve. The roar of 80,000 spectators became a distant hum as he focused entirely on his body, each stride, each breath measured and controlled, just as Coach Williams had taught him. The defending champion, Jason Reeves, pulled slightly ahead in lane 5, while Mateo Sanchez from Brazil matched Marcus stride for stride. Halfway through the race, as they hit the backstretch, Marcus felt strong. The countless training sessions, the early mornings, the sacrifices, all of it had prepared him for this moment. He maintained his position, conserving energy while staying within striking distance of the leaders. As they approached the final curve, Coach Williams' voice seemed to cut through the noise of the crowd. "This is where champions are made." Marcus shifted gears, his legs responding instantly. He passed the runner from Kenya, then the Russian athlete, moving into 2nd position behind Reeves. The final straightaway appeared before him. Reeves was just 3 meters ahead, his form starting to show signs of fatigue. The gap closed to 2 meters, then 1. With 40 meters remaining, they were shoulder to shoulder, 2 Americans battling for Olympic gold, while the crowd rose to its feet in a deafening roar. 20 meters from the finish line, Marcus felt his lungs burning, his legs becoming lead. For a brief moment, doubt crept in, the same doubt he had felt years ago when Coach Richards had told him he wasn't good enough. In that split second, Marcus remembered everything. The rejection, the lonely training runs, his mother working double shifts to support his dream, Coach Williams believing in him when no one else would. With a final surge of determination, Marcus leaned forward at the finish line, crossing mere inches ahead of Reeves. The stadium erupted. Marcus fell to his knees, gasping for air, uncertain of the result until he looked up at the scoreboard. 1. Johnson, USA, 43.702. Reeves, USA, 43.773. Sanchez, BRA, 44.06, Olympic gold, and a new Olympic record. Coach Williams reached him first, wrapping him in a tight embrace as tears streamed down both their faces. The American flag was pressed into his hands, and Marcus draped it over his shoulders as he took a victory lap, waving to the ecstatic crowd. In the stands, cameras captured his mother sobbing with joy, surrounded by supporters wearing Team Marcus shirts. And on a television screen somewhere back in his hometown, Coach Richards watched his former reject become an Olympic champion. The medal ceremony felt like a dream. Standing on the highest podium, Marcus bowed his head as the weight of gold settled against his chest. When the national anthem played, he fought back tears, remembering Diender's words about what that moment would feel like. Later, in the press conference, journalists from around the world asked about his journey, his record-breaking performance, and his plans for the future. One reporter brought up Coach Richards. "There are reports that your former coach is watching from home. What would you say to him now?" the reporter asked. The room fell silent, everyone eager to hear if the new Olympic champion would take this opportunity for vindication. Marcus took a deep breath. "I would thank him," he said finally. Confused murmurs spread through the press room. "Thank him?" the reporter pressed. "Yes," Marcus nodded. "His rejection taught me something valuable, that sometimes the biggest obstacles in life aren't there to stop you, but to show you how badly you want something. I hope my journey inspires other athletes facing discrimination to keep pushing forward." He paused, looking directly into the cameras. Representation matters in sports. When young black athletes see someone who looks like them standing on this podium, it creates possibility. That's more important than any medal. The story of Marcus Johnson, from rejected teenager to Olympic champion, became more than a sports headline. Schools across the country examined their athletic programs for signs of bias. Sports federations implemented new diversity guidelines. And in neighborhoods like the one where Marcus grew up, track registrations doubled as young runners found new inspiration. 1 month after the Olympics, Marcus visited his old elementary school. As he walked into the gym wearing his gold medal, hundreds of children cheered. Standing at the back of the room was Mrs. Harper, the teacher who had first noticed his talent all those years ago. "I always knew you were special," she said, hugging him tightly. Marcus smiled. "No one achieves something like this alone," he replied. "This medal belongs to everyone who believed in me, and to those who didn't."